with All In Learning. I've spoken a couple of times with Dr. Gray. So I'm going to frame All In Learning for you, and then we're going to go in. I'll go in, and I'm in a teacher's account. I'll go in and show you what teachers are typically doing in their classroom using the platform. So a little bit about the background of the company. So we were talking earlier about the CPS systems they're using the college for attendance and making sure you're showing up to the large lecture hall. The core team that built that company, they got acquired about 7 years ago, and they took that chunk of money, and the bulk of the business, although I was on the higher ed team, the bulk of the business was in the K-12 space. And they realized that they could not continue selling $3,000 clicker sets. It was a hardware company, right? And there's only 3,000 times X number of classrooms. You run out of money really quickly. They set out to build a cloud-based, everything was moving to the cloud at this time, a cloud-based teaching and learning platform. And they built it from the classroom up. So they built it from a teacher's lens. We've worked with teachers for a number of years. We know if something's easy for teachers to use, it saves them time and it makes them more effective in the classroom, they're going to use it. If something's not easy for teachers to use, but it makes them more effective in the classroom, may or may not save them time, there's going to be a subset of those teachers that use it. And once it becomes a little bit difficult, it's what happened with the clicker systems that were in the K-12 space. You probably have some of them that are in the media center that are not checked out because the software wasn't updated or it became too complicated. And then you've got a lot of money and technology that's just sitting there because the teacher's like, that's not easy for me to use. My day is busy enough, I don't have time to mess around with that. So we built All In Learning for teachers first and foremost. So most teachers, can't say all teachers, but most teachers are going to find this platform very intuitive and very easy to use, okay? We built it based on educational research. Our belief as a company is that ongoing formative assessment drives student achievement. The sooner you know they're either comprehending or not comprehending what you're teaching, the more effective you're going to be in the classroom, all right? So what we want to do as a company is give teachers daily data to inform their instruction. So we're going to go through examples of, well, how easy is it for me to get the data, Greg? How easy is it for me to create an assessment? How easy is it for me to score that assessment? How easy is it for me to look at and understand the data? How's that presented back to me? Okay, so I'm going to go through examples of all of that. The first example I'll walk through is this top one is, you're familiar with, I saw some nodding heads, so you're familiar with student response systems, or generically called clickers. Many of you have probably used them, okay? So we have very inexpensive, we're not a hardware company, we're a software subscription company, software as a service. Therefore, our clickers are a fraction of what any of the other clickers out in the market. And it's just one mechanism, it's just a data input mechanism for you to understand if the class is comprehending or not, okay? And this is how easy or difficult, depending on how you look at this, our systems are to use. I've got a receiver unit that's plugged in up here. It's a USB receiver unit. Off of my home page, I'm going to say, hey, I want to use All In Response on the fly. I don't want to have to build anything in advance or build an answer key or anything else. I just, when you look like you're fading or it looks like you may not be comprehending what I'm talking about, I'm going to ask you to respond to see if you actually, I need to judge where you are as far as following along. So I'm in my teacher account before class starts. I know I'm going to use clickers today. I'm going to click on All In Response on the fly. I'm going to name this, whether I name it warm up, exit ticket, unit 4 review, what have you. I'll just call it Washington. I'm going to choose what class is that I've got in front of me, right? If you teach multiple classes, you'll be my first period class. And then I'm going to get a floating toolbar that comes over. This is floating over the All In Learning website. We may be at BrainPop, Study Island, USA Test Prep, a particular site that I go to on a regular basis, a PDF, a Word document, it doesn't matter, okay? And when I want to check for understanding, I'm just going to say, hey, start question. Now the question could be written up here on the board, or it could be simply me verbalizing out the question to you, okay? So does everybody have a pad, by the way? Raise your hand if you do not have a response pad. Okay. All right, so my question to my class, you are my class today, is based on elevation class, which capital city is at the highest elevation? A is Atlanta, B is Denver, C is Santa Fe, and D is Tallahassee. So based on elevation, which capital city is at the highest elevation? If you think it's Atlanta, you're pushing A. If you think it's Denver, you're pushing B. If you think it's Santa Fe, you're pushing C. And if you think it's Tallahassee, Florida, you're pushing D. So the receiver unit is up here. These are technically line of sight, but you can see most of those pads are coming in. This is a bit of a larger classroom here. Okay? Once it receives something for that particular pad, it's going to turn blue, indicating to you that we recorded that pad number. No one knows who's responding or how they're responding, all right? So there's no embarrassment factor for the kids. So if one person gets this wrong, the entire class doesn't turn to look at that one person. If you want to change your mind, if you want to foster a collaborative environment in here, so talk amongst your table, and if you want to change your mind, I'll give you a minute to change your mind, you can certainly do that. So it's not just one and done. Okay? And if you change your mind, it just flashes yellow. Of course, the same button twice, it flashes green. I had a school call me and said everybody's getting 100 on the clicker questions. Does not mean it's correct, right? I verbalized this question. The software has no idea what the correct answer is. All right, so I can see that 15 of my students have responded. I'm going to go ahead and end this particular question. I get a graphical representation of what the class thinks. I personal preference, I like the pie chart. We break it out into percentages, but if I scroll over the top, I can see the actual count. So 11 of us think it's Denver. One of us went to Florida State or is a huge Seminole fan. And 3 of us think the correct answer is C, Santa Fe. So we're kind of across the board here, right? We've got fair representation. Does anybody feel really strongly in their answer? I saw you nod your head, and you want the barbecue chicken plate. You believe the correct answer is Denver. Yeah. Okay, and you would be in the majority, right? Because most of the folks in here thought the correct answer was Denver. Anybody disagree? Anybody feel strongly enough to disagree to speak up? Don't be shy.
I put C out of it.
I put C.
Because Denver, why? Why'd you pick C?
Mile High.
Mine
That's Denver.
That's right.
Yeah.
I didn't know either one of them, so I just guessed.
I just guessed too.
Okay. All right. I ask this question every single presentation. So when I come back in the fall, to train your teachers, they'll already know the correct answer. We should get a much different response, right? They'll already know the correct answer. The actual correct answer to this question, everybody picks Denver because the Mile High City, the Denver Broncos, just ingrained in our head. I like to say for a couple of different reasons now that it's called the Mile High City. It's not just elevation. But the actual, that's where you're supposed to laugh. The actual correct answer is C, Santa Fe. Santa Fe, New Mexico sits in the mountains at 7,000 some odd feet. Denver's at 5,000 some odd feet.
What?
This is why I asked the question, because I'm guaranteed pretty much to get a discount. A lot of times I'll get 100% down, right? If I asked that question in a class, and you raised your hand and you said Santa Fe, even though you were guessing, you said Santa Fe, I'm going to say great job, and we're going to move on. I'm going to assume the other 29 students in here understood that question. Okay? Now I know we're not comprehending what I just mentioned. Okay? As one principal likes to refer to it, it's the immediacy of the data. It's an authentic reteaching moment. I know it's an authentic reteaching moment right now. I don't have to wait until I give you a test next Friday, et cetera. You didn't get it. Okay? Different ways. So there's nothing I had to do. I didn't prep anything. I'm just prepared to ask the question when I'll ask the question. So what I tell teachers is if you get these sets, this is the easiest way to start using them. And whenever you would normally say, hey, does that make sense? Is everybody with me? Does anybody have any questions? Because they're all going to say they're with you. They're all going to nod their head yes. No one's going to ask you any questions. Same thing when I train teachers. Right? I can look around the room and know something's not computed.
Well, I have a question.
What's that?
I have a question. You said they could change their mind. Can you make it where they can't change their mind? Because they might ask, hey, Amy, what did you put? And she said she put C. So,
not today, but we develop every 3 weeks. So I'll tell you a little bit about the company as we go through this. If that's something that you want as a teacher, we're going to ask you to give us that feedback. Our development path is driven by our users, and overwhelmingly our users are teachers giving us feedback. We do get feedback from administrators and from districts as well, but It's the platform for teachers for daily data. So today, is there a button to say they can only answer once? No, because again, this is for those quick checks in the class. It's not necessarily we're taking a test on these
Okay.
classes.
Is there an allotted amount of time that you can set for them to answer?
No, it's just until I end it. So there's not a built-in, you know, some of the other sets that you had, I saw those other sets, right? You can put a built-in timer and it can count down and those type of things. This is meant to be simple, just are you with me or are you not? Okay?
Is that, what did you call it, I'm sorry, receiver?
Yeah,
Is it portable? Or is it, it's corded? Oh, it is.
yeah, you got the cord to plug it into USB, but absolutely it's portable.
I
The
mean,
sets-
is it usable, because I teach in multiple spaces. We go out into a dance room, and so I'm just wondering if they could take clickers with them and answer when we go out there.
If you have your computer, do you take the computer with you with a USB plug-in? You have to have a laptop.
It'll work on a laptop though?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So yes, they're portable. You can
As
also,
long as it's plugged into.
yeah, these are also shareable. So, hey, I can get my own set. Dr. Gray didn't like me enough to buy me my own sets. The two of us are sharing. You can trade them off every hour on the hour.
And can you save the data?
Would you like to save the data?
Can you?
Let's hit end session here. And what that's doing now is it's generating a report for me, so that I can go look at the data I just put. Okay, and I'm gonna come to the reports in just a second rather than go right to that one. The second way that we're gonna show collecting data is via plain paper bubble sheets, and we're gonna use, I'm assuming this is the camera of choice in here, right? This is probably what's in most classrooms. We're going to use this document camera. We work with most document cameras that are in the buildings today. The big names that we do not, because they do not write to the USB video streaming standard, are Elmo and Smart. Elmo manufactures for Smart. Those two don't write to that USB video streaming standard, so they only want to work with their own software. So if you have those brands in your particular class, they're not going to work with All-in Learning. But these work absolutely fine. A lot of people are buying $100 IPVO document cameras. Those work fine. This is a $35 web camera that works fine. What I'm getting ready to do here, you can do with your phone or your tablet device. You can get ready to scan these, so it's just another way of collecting these. So I've got, it's passed out the test, passed out the bubble sheets, and we support instructor response and rubrics. So this is not just language arts is represented in here, right? Don't fold your arms, because we can handle that. We can handle rubrics. We'll talk about that. It won't be quite as quick as this, but we can do it, okay? So I passed out my test, passed out my bubble sheets, and my students are going to finish at all different times. So I'm going to go into my lessons and assessments tab. And we're going to go build an assessment later, but I just kind of want to show you this before I get to the reports. I'm going to choose a particular assessment that I have either built or someone distributed to me. So it's not just me. If we're data teaming, PLC, you remind me again, Dr. Gray, what you call curriculum huddles?
So debriefings.
Your debriefings, right? Debriefings on a common assessment. One person on a team can create the assessment with a click of a button, distribute it out so everybody's got it. So when we meet, we're all comparing the exact same data. I'm going to activate this assessment. Most of it's multiple choice. There is a constructed response on here and a rubric question on here, but most of it's multiple choice. So I'm going to say, hey, I want to use the document camera to scan the bubble sheets. Again, I'm going to choose what class I have or getting ready to score. It's going to remind me, hey, Greg, you've already scored this class. Do you want to generate a new report here, which most teachers don't. They usually want to go add 2 kids that weren't here. They were at the track meet or something. But I do want to generate a new report, so I'll say yes. And there's my Lumens Ladybug. So my students are done with the test. They can give them to me, or I'm going to walk around. And we just have to be able to see the 4 corners and the QR code. And if you mix students, so I teach 5 classes, one paper, my 5th period student got in my 1st period class, we're going to tell you, we're not just going to score that kid. You're going to say, hey, that kid doesn't belong in this particular collection of students here. I should probably make sure that I'm got my first period kids here. All right, and it should go this quick. So I'm just putting them under here. I triggered red to come up on purpose because I'm going to tell you where, I've done this enough to know where teachers are going to struggle in the very beginning with our platform. Green is everything's fine, we got no problem processing that bubble sheet. Red is there's something on that bubble sheet we don't know how to process. What could cause it? Well, he could be using ink or felt marker or something. He could change his mind. Right? We can't read that as a line through and know that he means the answer C, so we're going to flag that for you. It could be that I'm taking a 40-question assessment, and I skipped question 17 with full intentions of coming back to it. I don't know if you've looked at a bubbled-in sheet before. I look at a completed sheet, and it takes me a while to figure out what line's blank, and I'm looking for it. So most kids aren't going to, if it's blank, we're going to flag it in red and call it to your attention. How do you want to handle that? Do you want to pass it back? Do you want to just say, hey, it's incorrect? Totally up to you on how you want to handle that as a teacher. And then lighting can also cause glare to come off of these bubble sheets, particularly if we talk about some green solutions. I have schools that will laminate these or put these in sleeve protectors, so for those quick checks, I may be fine scanning and wiping them clean, okay? And you can tell if I turn this a certain way, light's going to hit it, you'll see it's very reflective. Number 2 pencil is extremely reflective directly beneath these fluorescent lights. So if light happens to hit it a certain way and we can't differentiate, we can't tell which is darker than the other, we're just going to say, hey, we're not sure what to do here, okay? How do you handle that as a teacher? Well, there's a rescan button, so if you get a big number here, more than likely you've got a lighting issue, you know that up front. I could say, hey, just kill this row of lights, rescan this bubble sheet, right? I don't need to go through and tap it in. This one was just one, so if I tap on the hand, it's going to take me into what we call manual scoring. And we are going to highlight for you which one we don't know how to process. So that one just indicated one of the bubbles on the 40-question bubble sheet. Doesn't mean it's numbered one. So we'll highlight in red so you're not trying to hunt through and figure out which one we're having trouble processing. Okay? There's a mark all button, so if they skip 7 on a 40-question test, I call that our high school button. Those high school teachers are not passing back bubble sheets. You turn it in, you didn't bubble in 7. I'll do that. I'm not going and tapping in on 7 things to count them wrong. We'll just count them all wrong up front. I can look at this sheet and know that he wanted to answer C on that particular question, so I can tap that in for him because I can look at it and see. Make sense? Okay. The constructed response, and this will make more sense after we go build one, but the constructed response and the rubric question that we added onto here, when we're scanning those, we're going to go ahead and count those as correct. And that's by design for a couple of reasons. One, hopefully more kids got it right than wrong, and the kids got it right, you don't ever have to touch it. And 2, this rubric is probably an essay question or something that's going to require me to spend some more time looking at and grading that. And I don't have to have done all that for 120 kids before I can get any data to act on. I can reactivate this and make adjustments to my rubric later because I may grade those essay questions over the weekend. But I can see data for the assessment today once I score. And if they did not get the constructed response correct, I can just tap on it. And if they didn't get the full rubric, I can just make an adjustment to my rubric. All right? I'm going to go ahead down, and once again, I'm going to end the session. Once I end the session, it's going to generate a report. So we're not going to talk about what the reports look like in our platform. Any questions on anything I've covered so far? How's my pace and cadence? I'm told I talk a little fast sometimes. Fine? Okay.
You did say we are going to go back and look at the constructed response and rubric stuff a little bit.
Language arts is in the house. Yes. Yeah, we will. We'll build one so you can see. So I'm just trying to navigate to something where I have more than 1 or 2 kids scanned in it. So here's a good example, okay? So in my account, everything that I collect, however it's coming in, there's a report generated for that data that's coming in, okay? And it'll be listed in my reports area, and it'll be a listing of all the data that's coming in. When I want to go look at it, I'm just going to click on the name of the report, and it's going to expand into the reporting package. And the reporting package is, the reports are going to be the exact same whether I tap in the answers for my rubric, right? Made a quick rubric adjustment, whether they came in via the clickers, whether they come in off of, or whatever, if you go in that direction, they can submit that way, or if I scan the bubble sheets, okay? So the package, once you get used to the reporting packages, it doesn't alter based on how the data is coming in. So the first report, as soon as I click on it, the first report we put up in front of you is the student proficiency. It's nothing more than here's the class and here are the scores in this particular assessment. Okay? You can easily sort through any of the reports within our platform. And so if I'm curious to see which kids struggled on this assessment, I'm going to click the score button. It's going to resort this low to high. I want to see it the other way. We're going to sort it high to low. I want to see it alphabetically, which I think is how it was delivered to us. I'm going to tap on the student's name. The student non-proficient standard by report. So I'm assuming we're looking at and analyzing standards performance, right? Okay. So I've mapped standards on this particular assessment. We'll do an example of that. I can generate a report that I can pass back to the students so that they can see on this assessment, here are the 3 standards that we used, and here's how this particular student performed across those 3 standards. They can also see the high score in the class, the low score in the class average, and then obviously they're going to know what their score is. Okay, so that's something I pass back to the students. Student feedback by standard is just another way of looking at that as a class, and I need to know what kids I need to do remediation with on this standard. There's my regrouping with the click of a button for this particular class. Enrichment activities, I mean, it's that easy for me to go through this standard by standard. Feedback by question is how they answered each question. Most teachers' go-to report once they start collecting data in All-In Learning tends to be the item analysis report. So for this particular assessment, what questions did this class struggle with? So we break it out across the top. That's the average by question across the top. And then a breakdown of every single student that took it down below. And with the click of a button, I can resort and bring the kids that missed question 3 up to the top. Many times there'll be a quick pattern here that I can see, hey, every kid that missed it thought the correct answer was B. Yes?
Yeah, at the bottom, you got your export to CSV.
I'm sorry?
Your export to CSV button.
Yes.
Now, that's going to, will you be able to right click on it and save it, and then will it go into Excel from there? So you can do like averages and stuff?
Yep.
Does that have to be in Google Chrome? Or-
We highly recommend you run our platform in Google Chrome.
Okay, because I know some Internet Explorer won't even give you the option to export. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, and not every single one of our reports you can export, but many of them you can, yes. And
Okay.
it's going to take it out. You can go manipulate that data however you want.
Okay.
Okay? If I like to review, so if I've given the assessment, it's the following Monday, I want to review with the class how we did on this particular assessment. I can't really bring this report up because I may scroll down too low and people are going to see who got what on this. But this top item analysis report is graphically driven. And so I can quickly see, well, here's a good example, right? We didn't do too well on question 11, and every single kid that missed it thought the correct answer was B. That's going to jump out at you, right? As opposed to, hey, we didn't do too well on a question, and I've got representation across A, B, C, and D. We really didn't understand that question. B is, yeah, they were close, they just didn't take it a step further. There's additional reports in here, so I'm not going to sit and click and show you every single report. Some of our reports have a filter. So if I want to put a filter on, so report summary, this is just going to give me a quick snapshot on this particular report. I can put a filter level in here. So let's just change this to a 70, not 100. And basically what it's going to do is comb through the data. It's going to show me the students and the questions that we were below that. And if we were below a particular standard, 70% or below across the whole class, it would bring that up as well. So it's just a quick snapshot on this particular assessment. If this were a collaborative assessment where I shared it with the team or somebody shared it with me, I would have the data for my class. If I gave it to 3 classes, this would be my first period, my second period, my third period, right? We also build that into one report for you as the teacher, so you can compare your classes separate from everybody else's if you want to. But over in our PLC data team area, because it was a shared assessment, when we meet as a team, we can just have one computer open, and there's all the classes that took that assessment and how those classes scored. Our item analysis is now going to be across the entire grade level. So rather than 26 kids in my class, some of the schools we work with, this may represent 500 kids took this common assessment. Okay? What questions do we struggle with across the grade level? Down below it is broken out by class. So this is, Dr. Graham, assuming the discussion they're having in your meetings, right? And your class did really well in question 1. We know what concept it covered. We know what standard it covered. My class didn't do too well. How did you teach that? What examples did you use, right? That's what you guys are doing in your data tuning process today. It's just difficult if you're all coming in with your own data. You don't get through a whole lot in an hour with, yeah, we didn't do well on question 14. We did fine on 14. We didn't do well on 7. Here, just it helps facilitate quickly and easily that discussion that you're having. You can also look at that in that item view that we talked about earlier. The table view, if I'm somebody that really likes to crunch down how many kids answered A versus B versus C on each question, you can pull that out as a CSV. You can look at it in here. Student analysis is going to break it out, so we're going to see a proficiency by class broken out across the top by standard. And again, all these are sortable. And then down below is going to be a table of every single student. So again, this would be a table of 500 kids in my previous example. With the click of a button, there's my resort across the grade level of kids that need additional work in that particular standard. They're the ones we're targeting for enrichment activities. Okay? So it's ease of use of collecting the data. It's ease of use of combing through, looking at it, and understanding the data. Any questions on anything I've covered so far? Anything not making sense?
I guess one of my questions is like grading the assessment. Are there ways like I know for a math class, I don't think we do a whole lot of multiple choice because that's not how we get tested from them, right? So like, how do we grade something like that using, maybe a document camera, whatever it may be, and get that data in here? Is that something that has to be manually inputted, or is it something that is there a way to do it as easy as you're showing us with these other examples?
For constructed response questions, right, where there's a correct answer.
Sir?
Where there's a correct answer on a math problem, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so do you have devices here?
Like on our hand? No, not right.
Students have devices?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so if I administer it where I'm pushing that assessment out to the devices, right? Or it could just be I'm pushing an answer key to the devices. They would input, they'd work the math problem on the sheet of paper. They would still, on their tablet, input the answer that you're looking for. Now, you're probably going to collect what they're writing on the sheet of paper, because many times you may get partial credit on that, depending on where they made their mistake. But yeah, I can push it out to the device, and if the correct answer is 49.7, they get 49.7. They can just submit it. It'll be right or it'll be wrong. That
And then, yes, sir. So I'm with you.
yeah. Now the other way is we could build a constructed response where I've got to tap that data in. But it sounds like, if I understand it correctly, if that's the way you're doing it today with math, I'm looking, he pointed this way, so I'm assuming the math team's over here. Right? How are you doing? So the question is, so for the constructed response, so for math and for ELA, how are you doing your item analysis and your standards analysis today? Because you have to manually grade those. And then it's a step further. You've got to manually grade it. And then you've got to keep a tab
Manually
somewhere,
record
you're
it.
opening an Excel sheet or a Google Doc of some sort.
I use mine in Google Classroom, so that kind of helps manage some of that stuff with it. Helps.
Okay.
But like I said, I do have
Math
to go
not.
and manually grade
Math,
each one.
manually grading it, manually
And then
writing it down.
keeping a tab, right? So
Mhm.
let's go through the process of actually building an assessment key. Because I think you offered that on the item there.
We did.
Okay. Yeah.
But you can talk about that, because if it'll help, we can put it back on.
Okay.
Because the way I understood the item bank, you just go in there and pick questions or whatever, but just talk about it, and we can see if that's something we need.
Okay. So I'm going to go over to lessons and assessments, and I'm going to build an assessment, okay? So there's item banks, so we've just done an integration with a company called Progress Testing. All they do is build assessment items, all right? It's 40,000 some odd assessment items across different grade levels and subject areas. Obviously heavily weighted to the Georgia milestones, grades, and subject areas, not surprisingly, because that tends to be what gets bought, right? But first we'll start, I'll come back to the item bank component of it. I'm going to go over to my Create New button. We can import PowerPoints and Word documents into the platform. Now the Word document needs to be formatted in a very specific format. So if you have all your tests are in Word, you've got 15 of them, and they're not in the right format, it's not going to be a click of a button and pull them in here. I'm just being honest with you up front, okay? PowerPoint, as long as it's a PPTX file, you're going to be able to import that into the platform. Anybody in here use ExamView? Ships with 11,000 textbooks, that's fine. If you've got teachers that use it, they can pull their assessments in via ExamView, export, import. Item bank, we're going to come back to that. Most teachers, I've already got my assessment I'm giving on Friday, right? It's already built, I've pulled that from wherever. I just want to build the key because I want to be able to quickly score or plug my data in. So I've got the item analysis and the standards analysis. When we come in and talk to the team, I've got that. I don't have to go to another document and compute all that. So we're going to just call this in this interface, teachers are going to have to give it a title, a grade, a subject, and a brief description. That's important not only for the teacher, because teachers that start using All-In Learning tend to use it with fidelity, which means there's going to be a tremendous amount of data that you're going to collect even in the first semester. When you want to go look for something, if you name everything quiz, you got no idea what you're looking at, okay? So naming convention is important. It's also important from the administrative side. You want to know what you're looking at if you want to go look at data. All right, so we'll make this 10th grade math 10 questions. I'll just put 10 in there for 10 questions. I'm going to click next. And what I'm essentially going to do is just plug in an answer key for the assessment I'm giving. Okay. Now we default to a 4-part multiple choice because 95+% of the bubble sheets that are printed in All-In Learning are 4-part bubble sheets. Well, I teach an accelerated class. You need an E column. You're just going to hit the 5, and you can print a 5-part bubble sheet. We are limited to printing no more than 5-part bubble sheets. Well, why are there 12 answer choices here, Greg? Because if I activate something and send it to a device, I'm not limited to our scanning engine using an existing camera to read the bubble sheet, right? If you're taking it on a device, we have more opportunity. There's a lot more answer choices, okay? But again, it's going to default to the 4-part multiple choice. So at this point, I'm simply tapping in an answer key. And if I don't have any multiple choice on this assessment, if I have all short answers, I can go plug a short answer in here. If I'm a language arts teacher and I'm grading strictly with a rubric, I can just build my rubric real quick in here. Okay, is this part making sense? I'm seeing some, this is what I mean, teachers are going to nod their heads yes too, and I can tell some of them are like, I'm not.
I mean, I guess that's the part that I'm mostly concerned about would be like the rubric and
Yeah,
how it works from there.
You teach
English, yes.
English, and you teach music or art or dance, interpretive dance. Okay, perfect.
So you have, let me tell you what you have in here. You have math, science, social studies, special ed, administrative, Spanish, media specialist, and physical education.
Okay.
A little bit of everybody.
All right, great.
Yeah.
I think we can all understand that I'm tapping in A, C, D, right, for my multiple choice portion of the test, right? Let's talk about a little bit more complicated side of the test, okay? So your rubric, I'm trying to get our team to change this, that's nothing more than the slider I'm going to use, right? And every rubric I've seen, it's either going to be a 4, 3, 2, or 1 for the most part, okay? So we're doing a redesign on our rubric. This is a little bit of a workaround because each part of your rubric is going to be a separate question today in our platform. That's going to change in the fall. But let's say for dance, you're going to have to help me out here, but is your rubric normally a 4 or 5-part rubric? 3, 4?
I have a 5-part rubric.
Okay, so we're going to make this a 5-part rubric. I made that example. All right. Now, if you want to map to standards, there's an Insert Standards toolbar here. And I'm going to come back and show you how to map to standards afterwards. If we want to go back through this, I can show you again. We license from academic benchmarks. So any software you use that has standards that you can map to in it, more than likely they're licensing. I think they changed their name to Certica or something, but we license from academic benchmarks. They maintain 50 states worth of standards and all the national standards, and as a company, we're not trying to do that. We just pay them, and we need the Georgia standards. We need the updated Georgia Standards of Excellence. So those that are will be tested this year, that are implementing in the fall, right? Science, and I forgot the other one. They're already in. Okay? If they need to be updated, we go to them, we get an updated file, it'll be updated. Okay? I'm going to come back, we're going to look at standards after the fact. So we've got a 5-part dance rubric. So I'm going to hit Save Assessment. And obviously, if these were AC, this is my answer key. Okay? Every question when I build an assessment, whether it's a rubric question, a constructive response, or a multiple choice, is a single point when you initially build it. 5 questions, 5 points, but they're effectively 20 points because it's 20%. We do all the math. It represents 100%. So it's 20% of the assessment. Is this, some teachers, yeah, okay. If you want to name, so when you go to look at a report or you bring your rubric up, if you want to know, you probably know your rubric inside and out. You know at part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't need it to be body posture. But if you want that, you can come onto this slide and you can name it. So you're going to tell me the 5 parts of your rubric.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Well,
Make sure it's something I can
when
spell.
you said 5-part, when I said 5-part rubric, I'm talking about how, like, I have 5 different levels for how I grade it. Not,
Oh,
so
so I put-
so whatever task they're doing, they're either like an A, B, C, D, or E. So the bottom level would be non-participant, the top level would be model for teaching, and I have a list of things that,
You want those list of
you
things.
see what I'm saying?
You want the list of things that you look at.
Yeah.
The different
Okay.
things you
Like,
look at.
what would a
like,
5 be?
Yeah. The list of
Under
what do you
eight,
look at? Like, you get what I'm saying?
Okay.
Yeah, this is what I mean, we're doing a redesign. So we're going to have to work around kind of a true rubric, right? But let's say I've built one of these before for dance, or it might have been dance. So we're going to call, first one's posture. Next one might be foot position. Eye contact
Okay,
with
so I look
audience.
for,
What's that?
I look for musicality, I look for technique, technical skill.
Cality. I don't know if I spelled that right. Tech skills.
Uh-huh.
You're looking for posture on this one, by the way.
Yes, that's included
Okay.
in technical skills, you're right. Musicality, technical skills. I'm not great at some.
Jumps.
Overall is always fun.
I'll make that last overall.
Stage presence, most important, stage presence.
And then overall is,
Overall impression.
all right. So I've named the parts of my rubric. Do you want to change? They're all going to be weighted equally, right? One weighted more. So I'm going to leave everything as a single point.
Okay.
Okay? I'm going to hit the save button. I'm going to go back to my lessons and assessments. Now, you're not going to have to do this each time, because your rubric more than likely doesn't change, is my guess. Same thing with English, right? It depends. I may be grading a Hamlet paper. The rubric's probably going to be similar to another
Depends
paper
on
I
the
grade.
type of writing.
Okay, so maybe you build 2 or 3 different rubrics, and then you can just make copies of them. You don't have to go through that process each time. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so they're doing their interpretive dance, right? Now, you may want to have this on your tablet, so you can just have your tablet or your phone right there, and you're doing this, rather than have your computer and doing this. But I'm gonna go activate this assessment, okay? And I'm gonna use manual grading. On stage, and if Samantha is good, I'm just gonna say, hey, she's my model student. Archie's doing great on everything. He could use a little work on musicality. Renee's musicality and stage presence is poor. So you see what I'm doing here? Same thing with an English paper, or whatever your rubric levels are, what you're taking off for.
And on, like, say an iPad, is that just where you can slide it as you're
Correct.
watching them?
Yep.
You just slide it?
And I use the slider, and if I just want to do it this way, I could try to do it that way too.
But you could also print, could you do is it like scan, you could do individual sheets, like individual, or no? So let's just say I have wanted a stack with every kid, and they all have their names on it, and then I mark it on that sheet, and then does it do that way to scan that way, or you've got to do it?
Oh, from a rubric, you're doing it this way.
Okay.
Yeah. I know there's some other systems out there where you can, I'm going to bubble in A, E, C, B, but 6 of one, half dozen the other. By
I
the
just
time you're
wondered.
bubbling all that in,
Yeah.
and then you got to turn around and scan
Well, I'm just
that.
saying if you don't have if you don't have Wi-Fi at the moment,
Yeah.
that's all.
And so what you now have, right, for my item analysis, I can see what areas of this particular rubric this class were weak in, okay? And so English is a great example, right? If you're not doing item analysis, most English teachers aren't doing item analysis. They just don't have the time to go compute a separate document for 120 kids for all the assignments that I've got to do. I now know for this class, these are the things we're going to work on collectively, right? We're fine in the other 3 areas for my first period class. My 5th period class may be something else entirely that I'm working on with them, because that's where that class struggled as far as my rubric is concerned. As opposed to reading 120 essays and then trying to mentally keep track of where you think you need to work, you now have it down to the class, and then you can also take it down to the students. So if a parent comes in for a parent-teacher conference, at least you've got some data in here that you can speak to them on why they got a 60 on that particular essay assignment. Helpful? Yeah, and you're not going to do this each time. You're going to build it once, and then if you need to modify it, you just make a copy and then you make a slight modification to it. And so I manually inputted this data. We could have scanned the multiple choice portion of the test and then adjusted the manual part of this like I showed in the very beginning, right? There's a couple of things I forgot to do as a teacher in this example. So I forgot to add standards. I realized Dr. Gray is coming in on Monday for our meeting, and we're talking about, I gotta go add the standards. I don't have it. I've already scored my classes. What do? I make a mistake on the answer key. So I build the answer key. I share it with the team. We're all on one team, right? Large school. And there's a mistake on it. We graded 500 kids with an answer key that's incorrect because I just tapped it in incorrect. Okay? How do I handle it? I forgot to weight a portion of my assessment. So your rubric may all be the same way. If it's all multiple choice, those questions are probably all going to be weighted the same. But if I've got a mixed assessment, my essay question is not going to count the exact same as if they missed one multiple choice question. I would change the weights on those individual questions. All right? Now, I could do that when I build it if I remember, but I might forget. And again, this was built for teachers. Ease of use is critical. Where might you make a mistake, and can we help you correct it? So I describe this as it's a teacher's best friend, because when you need it, you really need it. So we're in our reports area. I went in to actions, edit key and standards. And I can go in, if this were A, B, C, D, I could take A away and make C the correct answer. I can throw part of my rubric or part of questions out of a particular assessment. We'll take the points away and redistribute the percentage across the remaining. I forgot to add standards. I can go add the standards after the fact. And most teachers prefer to do this, so I don't even know what I'm going into, but most teachers prefer to add standards after the fact. So we're going to say, hey, those 3 standards, this is what are on this particular assessment. I'll just put them on every question. Rather than checking and unchecking boxes, I find it easier to do it this way. Okay, so I've just added standards. Now let's also say standards. We get the idea, right? Just added standards to this assessment. And maybe the overall impression is going to be worth twice as much as the rest of my rubric, right? Or I forgot to weight the essay question relative to the multiple choice. As soon as I hit save, we're going to go back through. I'm not rescanning. I'm not going in and tapping any additional information in for those kids. I don't have to rescan any bubble sheets. We know who activated this assessment key, who you shared it with, who activated, what students they scored. And we're going to go through underneath the hood, as we call it. And we're going to rescore every single student based on the changes that I just made. So there's no rescanning the bubble sheets necessary. So that is a lifesaver when you need it. And I haven't been in the school yet that doesn't need it at some point, just because, I mean, we're all human, we all make mistakes. Additionally, tracking for, how are you doing your standards analysis tracking currently? Or are we? I'm in your class. Greg's in your class. You're teaching me science, right? You've got some focus standards, I'm guessing. When I graduate or I get out of this class, I better have these standards down,
Yes.
right? So is there a way today that you have of tracking me over time on those particular standards?
We use data sheets that we present during debriefing, but that's it.
Okay. So this can become your data sheet. This is a data sheet that's going to aggregate over the semester. So we've added what we call a progress tracker. So your assessments have to have standards associated with them. And if they don't, you try to add them to the tracker. We're going to tell you how you, that for whatever reason you don't have standards there, you need to go add them. Here's how you go add them. Just like to remind you how Greg just added them to this, okay? So right here, if I drag and drop that, it's going to either add it to an existing tracker, if it's standards I'm already using, or if it's a brand new set of standards, it's going to create a new tracker. All right, so it says, hey, create tracker. So this is via drag and drop. You're going to choose what to drag and drop into here. It's not automatically going to build because you may do 2 clicker questions that you don't want them in your tracker. Somebody else may do 2 clicker questions, add the standards, and they want them in the tracker. Okay? And over time, what you're going to be able to do is when you come into the data talk, you can open up a spreadsheet. This would be for a particular class. So this is just my, whatever class it is, first period, third period, whatever class I open. And then we are loading the entire standards body. So in this example, I'm using Standards of Excellence, 8th grade math, it looks like, right? This is going to be a huge spreadsheet. Look at a lot of standards I haven't assessed yet, we haven't gotten to. It's also somewhat of a gap analysis in that, geez, I don't have any data right there for that standard. I should have taught that, either I didn't map it or maybe I forgot to assess on that particular standard. I need to go do that. Okay? Well, what's wrong? I don't know.
It would have been blank. It would have been a little blank. That's pretty cool.
I like that
Yeah.
now.
That's cool. That's a cool feature.
So that tells us what we didn't cover.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Tells you not only what you didn't cover, but it also says, hey, this is a focus standard for me, right? I can see for this particular class, I've done 5 different assessments, right? Here's the name of the assessment, the date it was administered. There were 12 questions, because there might have been 40 questions on the assessment. 12 of them were mapped to this particular standard. This is the class average across those 12 questions, and then I can see individual student performance across those 12 questions. This is a terrible example. I just have not had the time to go sit and build. What I really should have is red, red, yellow, brown, yellow, green, right? But you're going to see, you should be going from red to green over time. They should be getting better, hopefully.
Yeah.
Then, hey, Greg, they started off great, they're going down in your class. But this is going to give you everything you've done on that particular standard, and this top line here is going to aggregate it. So you know, hey, Dr. Grab asked 40 questions on that standard so far. We're only 4 weeks into the semester, and class average right now is a 62. But some kids are tracking very well, right? Some other kids, here's the ones I've got targeted for remediation. This is what I'm doing for remediation. It may be that I do some remediation things and drop them in here, or some of these are blank because I didn't have to assess those kids again on that particular standard because it was a remediation type standard, or remediation type test.
Question. Now, can our administrators go in and see our data?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
We don't have to have debriefing.
I think the debriefing is quite
That's why
I've been in enough schools, so. and-
But what it will do, if I have all biology,
Yeah.
y'all can group that all together.
Yeah, just the
Yeah.
Y'all
biology.
can talk to me, it'll show me each class and where the issues are, and it'll show y'all the same thing.
And they'll
So
say
you're not up
it's
there
not
individually.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I like
Do it by
that.
subject instead of.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And then for you, you look at it as it's your students, when you're talking about halt time, extended learning time, pacing guides, and all that kind of stuff.
Nodding heads is good. Sometimes laughing's good, sometimes laughing's like, well, I should get off the stage right
No,
now.
that was good, and this.
Yeah.
Data brief is actually good for me too.
So this is a software program that you're selling, right? More than the clickers.
Clickers are a very, very small component of all that learning.
Because my students can answer on an iPad or a Chromebook or
They can.
Oh,
in
I
addition
love
to
it.
these clickers, right? So it's
Yeah.
more a software type thing
It's a-
that you're selling.
Yeah,
right?
software as a service, so we're an annual license, we're a subscription.
So clickers will probably like take it out the doors, and then the Chromebooks and iPads are more like the, quiz like
Yep.
12, 15 type questionnaire.
Yep. And clickers, I mean, so it depends, some schools have clickers, some don't, right?
Mhm.
But if I've got a clicker set and I don't have time to grade 120 homework sheets of paper, but I collect it and I put a check mark on it and I go mark it down. Did Greg turn something in? Did Greg not turn something in, right? My younger son's a little bit like me, and that he can be somewhat of a smart aleck, and it was, I don't know, 6th grade or something. His homework was not neat enough for me, right? At that point, I still thought you had to shut everything off and sit at a desk, just like I did, right? Of course, he's getting straight A's, I didn't get straight A's. And I'm arguing with him about his homework and everything. And he's like, Dad, it doesn't matter. I'm getting A's. I understand it. I know what I'm doing. Those are the correct answers, whether you like how they're written out or not. And oh, by the way, she doesn't grade them. It's just a check mark because she can't go through 120 homework assignments every single night. I'm like, well, I think I'll go help Mom with dinner now. That's tough. But imagine that you've got an easy way to scan it or collect it off a device, or I've got a clicker set. Take your homework out. Just tell me. Don't look. I just need to know if you guys are getting this.
I don't want to click.
I may need to get creative in how I ask it. So I may need to get creative in math. I may need to give them 3 options in math, and the 4th option is I didn't get any of those, which means I'm nowhere close to the correct answer. But you're now getting data coming in that you can act on. The homework is informing my instruction, as opposed to me collecting it and then how long do you hang on to those sheets of paper before they go in the recycle bin, right?
Ms. Berger, you said you wouldn't want a clicker set?
I said, I want a clicker set right now.
So
No, we
if this
said
homework, if it's homework for math, Ms. Berger, how would that look?
Oh
like in
gosh,
your
that would
class?
that would make it so much easier because while they're doing their warm up, I go around. I think one of the few that actually still check, not for accuracy, but for attempts.
Right.
So I go, while they're doing their warm up, I am quickly in my iPad putting down that they did 5 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 or whatever.
that'd be so
And I am quickly going through and looking at each individual paper. But if I turned around and didn't do that and said, okay, on number 5, 7, 10, go enter your answer. Go enter the answer you got. That would probably give me a better representation of whether
They understand.
they understood it, and it might save some time of going over every single problem.
Exactly.
Because we always give all the answers. I mean, if I'm gonna give homework, I'm gonna go over the answers. That doesn't make any sense. Why would I make them do something and not go over it? So we always go over the answers. Whether we work everyone depends on them, but I've seen the kids say, we got it. You know, we don't need to see any of these. And that might not be true. Because I've seen some papers that say, I didn't see this answer on everybody's paper.
But with these, you just,
These,
they
they
just
can-
look and click, and then it tells you what you need to address right on the board in 5 minutes, or 2 minutes, or 3 minutes.
It also keeps them more engaged in the classroom, right? Because they don't know
Yes.
when you're asking the question, they're going to pay more attention. And the only thing they can do on that device, so we are developing a virtual clicker that they're going to be able to use a Chromebook or something down the road and kind of send a clicker message in. The only thing they can do on that device is answer the question that you're posing, and they've got to be engaged and paying attention to you. We're all, the kids are masters at this. I am in business meetings and people are masters at this, right? The president's getting up speaking and somebody is redoing their fantasy baseball lineup while they're staring right at them because they got a screen up here, right? So just because the screen's open and they're looking at you doesn't necessarily mean that they are where you are at that particular point in time. What questions do you guys have for me? We want to talk about building from an item bank, right? Just to see if that's of an interest. And then maybe we'll build from an item bank and then I'll activate that assessment and for like a student taking it on a device and show you what that looks like.
Can we do it in Mac?
Do it in,
The item bank, let's look at the item bank in Math.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Because I want to get your input. Because the rest of them are pretty, I mean, like social, I mean, math is the one that I wasn't real sure. Yeah, while he's doing that, what, have y'all decided for lunch? Everybody else?
Okay, ninth grade, you got anything on algebra 1?
You want sub?
I ate whatever.
Well, we got like,
so we want to put, well, do you want to look by standard? Most? Okay, so
Lee, go over there.
this is probably not a good representation. So this is my demo account. They've uploaded everything for me. If we want to search by, so I could put tags in here, 9th grade,
Coach May's got lunch.
and then math. And it should, but I'm going to have a lot of stuff. This is the progress testing 9th grade. Looks like statistics and algebra. Right? Those are what's from progress testing. This is specific to.
I mean, can we look at both at the same time or not?
No, we're going to go to algebra or stats, or you can search by standard. All right, but let's just take a look at this. Let's just scroll it out. Right? And I don't know how many questions are in there.
What they like that math inventory we took?
This is where
Seriously.
most teachers, because they're using, they're probably looking at search by standard, right? Say, hey, I need 5 questions. But
All
if
right,
you
so
get the,
let's go do Sarah, go on RN to.
okay, so it's going to be standards of excellence for 2016.
It's probably gonna be Georgia, Common Core, Georgia performance standards back.
Those are going to be older. Yeah?
Well, they just right.
Yeah, so these are going to be the later ones.
Okay. All right.
2016, that's just the.
Go for one of those first two, because those are the ones that we have a hard time with, these, that is actually one of our first things that we struggle with, convert units and rates with dimensional analysis. Well, go, scroll down. Okay.
Be a subset of.
You get more comfortable. I want to see what your heart gonna be when them kids are like.
No, we're not better than that.
Chop it all out. Sounds like a side salad.
The only job they need.
You know, it would be just.
You got some constructive response here, or essay type questions here, too. So you can just go grab and listen. We're gonna say, so you like these questions?
Well, I mean, definitely that one.
Okay.
For a second, because that's.
I
guess he realized what I was gonna do. Your attention Spanish.
You may, some teachers actually put.